The two had met that summer over the 4th of July holiday, when Kay Graham and her Washington Post editorial page editor and friend Meg Greenfield had dragged Buffett to Greenfield's house on Bainbridge Island for a long holiday weekend. To Buffett, a weekend on an island, a half-hour ferry ride from Seattle that could be escaped only by boat, seaplane, or hitching a ride over the bridge by car, was an anything-for-Kay event. Greenfield had also recruited him for an all-day visit at the nearby four-house compound on the Hood Canal that Bill Gates had built for his family. Gates, 25 years Buffett's junior, was appealing to Buffett mainly because he was known to be brilliant, and because the two of them were neck and neck in the Forbes race. But computers looked like Brussels sprouts to Buffett. No, he did not want to try them this once. Greenfield, however, had assured him that he would like Gates's parents, Bill Sr. and Mary, and that other interesting people would be there. With some reluctance, Buffett had agreed to go. Kay and Warren drove down the dirt and gravel road to Meg's glass-walled contemporary house, where silky pink and purple sweet peas waved like pocket squares next to the front door. The weekend opened inauspiciously when Buffett learned that Graham and journalist Raleigh Evans and his wife would be staying in the two guest rooms of Greenfield's house, which faced out toward Puget Sound. He, however, would be staying in a little guest house some distance away. When he got there, he saw that the owners had put a temporary bed in a sitting room downstairs for him, since the other rooms were fully occupied. Buffett, who didn't really care about his surroundings, was a good sport about this sort of thing. Greenfield had stocked his room with cherry coke, See's candies, and honey-roasted peanuts to make him more comfortable. The bathroom he was supposed to use, however, had a sign in it that said, "No TP." Baffled, he enlisted Graham and Greenfield, who had accompanied him to the bed and breakfast, as interpreters, since no one was around to explain. Neither of them could figure out what no TP meant either. They decided that there was probably something wrong with the plumbing. The facilities at Greenfield's house were too far away for Buffett to use except when he was visiting during the day. Greenfield pointed out a bathroom at the gas station nearby and suggested this alternative. Buffett sat in his room that evening, eating his honey-roasted peanuts and drinking his cherry coke. Memories differ as to whether he visited the gas station facilities in the small hours, only to find that the door was locked. Either way, the next morning, at Greenfield's house, all of them puzzled again over what no TP meant. After breakfast, Greenfield shepherded her guests into town to stand at the roadside among a small crowd of people sprawled in lawn chairs for the 4th of July parade. Uncle Sam, in a blue tailcoat and stars and stripes top hat, oversaw a little brass band. Fire trucks, an ambulance, and antique cars idled by. Dogs trotted past in homemade costumes, led by their couturières. High-kicking high school cheerleaders preceded a troop of dozens who struggled to control a giant U.S. flag hoisted overhead. Another antique car or two rolled by, then a group of people dressed as strawberries, followed by the Kiwanis Citizen of the Year. Afterward, Greenfield held her annual garden party, at which guests in summery dresses and sport coats and ties played a vicious croquet match before the vivid backdrop of flowers rising from the lawn to her house. The following morning, Buffett pulled on a cardigan and arranged his wayward hair into a neat gray comb-over. Greenfield crammed all 5 of them into her little car for the 90-minute drive to the Gates compound. While we're driving down there, I said, "What the hell are we going to spend all day doing with these people? How long do we have to stay to be polite?" Gates had similar feelings. "I had a constant dialogue with my mom," he says, which was, "Why don't you come to the family dinner?" "No, Mom, I'm too busy. I'm working." So she told me Katheryn Graham was coming, and Warren Buffett. He was interested in meeting Graham, now a 74-year-old legend who had softened into an older, but still patrician and imperious figure, like a witty version of Queen Elizabeth. But I told my mom, "I don't know about a guy who just invests money and picks stocks. I don't have many good questions for him. That's not my thing, Mom." But she insisted. Gates flew in on a helicopter so he could make a quick getaway. When a tiny car pulled into the driveway, he was surprised to see a group of famous people, Greenfield and her guests, pop out like a gang of circus clowns. Graham was taken over to meet Gates, who looked like a recent college graduate in a red sweatshirt over a golf shirt, his collar turned up in a little saucer around his neck. While Gates was arranging for Graham to take a seaplane ride, Buffett was introduced to Bill Gates Sr. and his wife Mary. Then Bill III, known as Trey, was brought round to meet Buffett. Observers kept a weather eye on this introduction. Gates was well known for unleashing his impatience on things that didn't interest him. Buffett no longer walked off to read a book when he was bored, but had a way of disentangling himself very quickly from conversations he wanted to exit. Buffett skipped the small talk. He immediately asked Gates whether IBM was going to do well in the future and whether it was a competitor of Microsoft. Computer companies seemed to come and go, and why was that? Gates started explaining. He told Buffett to buy 2 stocks, Intel and Microsoft. Then he asked Buffett about the economics of newspapers, and Buffett told him that they had gotten worse because of other media. Within minutes, the two were deeply immersed in conversation. We talked and talked and talked and talked and paid no attention to anybody else. I started asking him a whole bunch of questions about his business, not expecting to understand any of it. He's a great teacher, and we couldn't stop talking. The day started to go by. The croquet games began. But still, Gates and Buffett talked on, even as many of Seattle's best-known people circulated around them. Speaker of the House Tom Foley, Chairman and CEO of Burlington Northern Jerry Grinstein, former EPA Administrator Bill Ruckelshaus, Arthur Langley, son of a former 3-term governor, his wife Jane and their son Art, and Joe Greengard, a close friend of Greenfield's, plus a local doctor, judge, newspaper owner, and art collector. Gates and Buffett took a walk on the pebbly beach. They were starting to attract attention. We were sort of ignoring all these important people, and Bill's father finally said, gently, that he'd prefer that we join in with the rest of the people a little more. Bill started trying to convince me to get a computer. I said, I don't know what it's going to do for me. I don't care how my stock portfolio is doing every 5 minutes, and I can do my income taxes in my head. Gates said he would pick out the best-looking gal at Microsoft and send her to teach me how to use the computer. He would make it totally painless and pleasant. I told him, you've made me an offer I almost can't refuse, but I will refuse it. As the sun descended toward the water during the cocktail hour, Buffett and Gates kept talking. At sunset, the helicopter had to leave. Gates did not go with it. Then at dinner, Bill Gates Sr. posed the question to the table, what factor did people feel was the most important in getting to where they'd gotten in life? And I said, focus. And Bill said the same thing. It is unclear how many people at the table understood focus as Buffett lived that word. This kind of innate focus couldn't be emulated. It meant the intensity that is the price of excellence. It meant the discipline and passionate perfectionism that made Thomas Edison the quintessential American inventor, Walt Disney the king of family entertainment, and James Brown the godfather of soul. It meant the depth of commitment and mental independence that led Jeanette Rankin to stand alone as the only representative in Congress to vote against U.S. entry into both world wars in the face of widespread ridicule. It meant single-minded obsession with an ideal. Focus meant the kind of person who could earn billions by allocating capital, yet be baffled by a sign that said, no TP. Sometime during the weekend, a guest who was less focused had figured out that no TP stood for touchy plumbing that couldn't handle toilet paper. At last, the mysteries of the indoor facilities had been revealed, and Buffett was liberated from the gas station. However, some traitorous member of the party, Graham, Greenfield, or one of the Evanses, had found the story so hilarious that even Buffett's introduction to the Gates family had included a recounting of the story of no TP. A day later, Buffett escaped the island and returned to the normal plumbing of Omaha. He could see that Gates was brilliant and that he understood business very well. But since the days when he told Katie Buffett not to invest in control data and passed on the chance to invest in the startup of Intel, Buffett had never trusted technology companies as investments. Technology companies came and went, their products often made obsolete. Now, his interest piqued, he bought 100 shares of Microsoft, which, to him, was like eating a single Cheerio. He couldn't bring himself to buy any Intel, even though he sometimes bought 100 shares just to keep track of a company. Grinnell College had made a lot of money from its Intel stock, but had already sold it. Buffett himself would never buy stock like Intel that depended so much on future growth and that he didn't fully understand. But he did invite Gates to the next Buffett Group meeting. Soon thereafter, he had gotten the phone call from Don Feuerstein and Tom Strauss, and for the next 2 months had thought of nothing but the miseries of Solomon.